Hey guys, what's up? If this looks like a huge headphone amplifier comparison or a huge loudspeaker amplifier comparison, then you'd be totally wrong. This is something else. This is actually a Hifiman Susvara review done in the most overkill fashion. So I'll be touching base on the most controversial claims about them. I'll be demystifying some myths about them. I'll be putting them on 30 amplifiers of all sorts. I'll be running a full set of measurements and I'll be comparing them with competitor headphones. So don't take it as another Hifiman Susvara review, but take it as something else entirely. Before I do that, please consider subscribing to this channel. It helps me quite a lot delivering you well-documented reviews. It took me quite some time finishing this one. Thank you for doing that, and let's get it done. When it comes to build quality, you can actually find some plastics and some pleather on Aria Stealth, but you cannot find any of that on Susvara and on H1000 SE. Only metal parts, a nicer and a stronger headband, deeper and comfier ear pads, and some wooden accents that are adding some refinement and class. At 450 grams, I find them really lightweight and comfortable to use long term compared to some other flagship headphones. These aren't applying a lot of pressure on top of my head or around my ears, making them some of the most comfortable planar headphones that I've used. Speaking about its tech, Susvara is a flagship open-back planar magnetic headphone that uses smaller drivers compared to the Aria Stealth and HE1000 SE, but that was made on purpose as a smaller diaphragm is much easier to control when dynamics are going crazy. The thickness of Susvara diaphragm is under a millionth of a meter, making it extremely responsive to a powerful magnetic flux. If light rays are shining directly on Susvara diaphragm, you can actually see its gold coating applied on top with a very complex process. Hifiman designed some acoustically invisible stealth magnets that are lowering total harmonic distortion, leading to a more transparent sound. They have an impedance of 60 ohms, and the lowest sensitivity that I've seen on headphones of 83 dB per a single milliwatt of power, making them the hardest to drive headphones in existence. This review is about 10 months in the making, as I needed to test them with as many headphone amplifiers, integrated and power amplifiers, so I can better understand them and squeeze the last drop of performance out of them. Before telling you a lot about the Hifiman Susvara in the most overkill fashion, I just want to let you know that these are simply the most misunderstood headphones out there. I've watched and I've read plenty of Hifiman Susvara reviews just to be let down by many of them because I don't believe people actually experienced the Hifiman Susvara at its fullest potential. I could easily finish my Susvara reviews some 10 months ago, something like that, but I would be telling you only a very small portion of that story. So let's start one by one what was actually wrong with those reviews, what didn't click, what didn't sound great to me. First of all is headphone measurements, and loudspeaker measurements is basically the same. So when you are doing headphone measurements, it doesn't matter if you are driving them with a 1 watt or 1000 watt amplifier because you'd be getting absolutely the same results in terms of frequency response. Why? Because you are sending a sine wave. A sine wave is actually a periodic oscillation of a constant amplitude given by the sine function. Problem is that music is never sending you constant amplitude. There are huge dynamic swings when music is playing, so it doesn't act like a sine wave, which is like looks like that. Meaning that if you measure them on any amplifier out there, doesn't matter, you'll be getting absolutely the same frequency response. And I've done that multiple times. I've measured them around 50 times, I believe, 15 times on different amplifiers, and I've got absolutely the same results. Does that mean that they are sounding absolutely the same with all those amplifiers? Absolutely not. They sounded very different with all of them. And the best ones that I've heard with them are sitting right now on this table. So measurements will be telling you only about the frequency response, but not about dynamics. There isn't such a reading what would tell you about dynamics, about transient response, about how impactful, how engaging, how fun that headphone or loudspeaker will sound. Such measurement sadly doesn't exist, but our our tiny brains can tell that pretty easily in microseconds and something like that. Problem number two is actually power. Being very loud sounding and being very well controlled, well driven are two very different things. Actually, I could make the Hifiman Susvara loud with a laptop, with a desktop PC, with a USB dongle, Bluetooth thingy. All those can easily reach 100 dB, so making them very loud when I'm sending them a constant amplitude. Problem is that, again, music never sends a constant amplitude. It goes up and down, all those dynamics. There are changes in microseconds in terms of timing, and timing is crucial, and all those low power devices just cannot keep up with that, with a rise of dynamics. And just delivering you a so-so experience with the Hifiman Susvara. There could never be too much power with headphones, with loudspeakers. There could be only too little power with headphones and loudspeakers. When you have a huge power reserve on top, you are basically guaranteeing that all those dynamics will be reaching the peaks. So they're right here. They will not go like that, but they will be reaching the highest peaks. That makes the Hifiman Susvara a lot more impactful, a lot more visceral sounding with such amplifiers, with such units. Can you guess why I'm driving the Hifiman Susvara with two power amplifiers and not with just with a single one? Because two are sounding slightly different. And believe it or not, actually Hifiman Susvara clipped a little with a single one when it was connected to a weaker source that was delivering less voltage. And with two amplifiers, they will never clipping with the Hifiman Susvara, just arriving at absolutely the best transient response. And of course, these amplifiers that you can see right here are sounding absolutely the best with Hifiman Susvara. Very different to any other portable dongles, Bluetooth thingies, my laptop and desktop PC, much different. And I'm not about the resolution, I'm about only dynamics, I'm about only speed, impact, transient response as a whole. Problem number three is never being open for experimentation with Hifiman Susvara, because they could sound really dead, boring, flat, uninteresting with some amplifiers, and completely different on the opposite camp with some other amplifiers. And I know that a lot of you don't believe the hype that Hifiman Susvara needs an overpowerful loudspeaker amplifier like I'm having right here. And let's think for a moment that such affirmation is false, and you can drive them perfectly fine with a headphone amplifier just awaking much nicer dynamics. And let's look at what Hifiman recommends for these headphones right here, for the best of the best. Hifiman actually developed an amplifier that was specially tailored for Susvara, and that, my friends, is EF1000 amplifier. And let's have a look at it. So it weighs 25 kilos, it provides 110 watts in 8 ohms, and it provides 20 watts of pure Class A power in 35 ohms. And that, my friends, is an overkill integrated or loudspeaker amplifier that will easily drive your loudspeakers and, of course, the Hifiman Susvara. And that was the moment when I realized that I need to try the Hifiman Susvara with loudspeaker amplifiers, because clearly Hifiman recommends that. And of course, I've tried experimenting with a lot of amplifiers. Not all of them sounded great, only very few sounded absolutely outstanding. I have plenty of headphone amplifiers that are coming on a weekly basis, that are going on a weekly basis. And of course, I've tried them all with the Hifiman Susvara. And let me tell you that those didn't stand a chance versus some super clean, transparent, super powerful integrated and power amplifiers. Those was something else entirely. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is not rocket science. This is just pure physics. This is how Hifiman Susvara behaves with music and not with sound waves. I just ranked 20 headphone amplifiers and 10 speaker amplifiers with Hifiman Susvara, and for that information please click on the link appearing on top or in the description below. Please don't skip that part, it's extremely important. With that out of the way, I have resumed at using them with two AHB2 power amplifiers or with a single S300 power amplifier, and sometimes I was switching them with the Flux Volot and with the Ferrum Ore and Hypsos power supply. And if you don't want to wander into dangerous territory with loudspeaker amplifiers, I believe that this is as good as it can get with headphone amplifiers. Just amazing sounding, both of them. Sound-wise, these are accelerating and decelerating like crazy, just going incredibly fast, super fast sounding in terms of transients. I don't believe I ever experienced such a super fast sounding planar magnetic headphone. And if I would never know all the tech inside those grills, I would swear that I'm listening to an electrostatic headphone, just incredibly fast sounding and impactful. And if you think that LCD4 by Odyssey are very impressive down low in the bass and the sub bass, super dense, super powerful, having a very powerful kick, think twice, because Hifiman Susvara are even more impressive down low if I'm driving them with any of these amplifiers. Just hitting me like a hammer, like sitting in between the hammer and the anvil. Super impressive, super impactful. Sometimes even painful with some particular tunes. With electronica tunes, sometimes it was too much, it was a little bit fatiguing. It was so impactful, like listening to a full range loudspeakers and just feeling all that bass information, all that impact with the entirety of my body. It was weird at first, but it was something else that was very clear from the start after putting them on these amplifiers. With Hifiman Susvara on my head, I knew that I'm listening to absolutely the last drop of information that is coming from my tunes. I'm listening to everything that my DAC is capable of. I am listening to everything that my amplifiers are capable of. The amount of micro details and information that came forward was just mind-boggling, something that I didn't experience out of other headphones. HE1000 SE were pretty close, and followed by the Meze Elite. Those were very clear, very detailed and clean, but these were even clearer than them. And everything else, every other top tier headphone like Odyssey LCD4, like RZH Phobos 2021, like Kennerton Wodan and many others, just didn't sound that clean, that detailed. Those actually sounded a little muddy, a little not that transparent, not that clean. Susvara was just way ahead in terms of everyone, in terms of detailed retrieval and transparency. It's like looking at your music with a magnifying glass, and anything cannot hide in the shadows anymore. So if you love listening to everything that is hidden in behind your tracks, if you love hearing new sounds, new notes, new things appearing in your tracks, these are doing that so often, so very often. Every single track you'll be finding something new, something that isn't happening so often with many other headphones. I didn't try every single Hifiman headphone out there, but from the ones I've tried, Susvara easily were the most organic, the most lifelike, the most just natural sounding. They have a much different mid-range presence compared to anything they've done before. And the treble is also quite different, so they sound very detailed, very clean at the treble, but they don't have that slightly piercing, slightly bright treble of the Aria Stealth and HE1000. So yeah, if you want the most organic, the most natural, the most sweet sounding Hifiman headphone, sadly it's the most expensive one, and it's called Susvara. When it comes to Soundstage, Aria Stealth and HE1000 were slightly narrower, but these ones are just decompressing my music slightly wider, so there are more sounds happening to my right, there are more sounds happening to my left. Some sounds are coming even behind my back, so that was quite interesting. All those enveloping me just fully and letting me choose the focus points. That was quite interesting. In terms of transients, or how fast and how impactful Hifiman Susvara could sound, these are to the headphone world exactly what Koenigsegg Jesko is to the automotive world. As simply put, I didn't experience a faster and a more impactful sounding headphone before, full stop. And I wish this will be really an exaggeration from my part. I wish this will be a lie. I wish this wouldn't be really the case, because I would be listening right now to the Odyssey LCD4 and just be super happy about it. But it is as it is, and the Hifiman Susvara is just even more impactful sounding, even harder slamming in the bass, even more visceral sounding, even more roughless sounding. When listening to some electronica tunes, it could become even too much. So are there too many dynamics, too much impact? Yeah, it can happen. When I'm listening to Infected Mushroom, Noisia, The Prodigy, Chemical Brothers, Igor, all that becomes just incredible. I'm just headbanging, toy tapping, grooving all along, and I cannot stop from smiling when listening to these ones. If I would use my laptop, if I would use my desktop, some USB dongles, some Bluetooth thingies, even my own benchmark HP4 didn't sound so engaging, so impactful. It was actually quite an interesting sounding. And if there is a headphone from the headphone world that is really a chameleon-like, that changes its personality, that changes its tonality, that surely Hifiman is that headphone. It takes the spot because they can sound really dead, uninteresting, boring, and completely different with some other amplifiers. And if you have money for the Hifiman Susvara, you should prepare a bigger budget for a better amplifier, because they wouldn't cut it with some low power sources or amplifiers. When it comes to Soundstage, Susvara isn't really pushing all those notes very far away, isn't decompressing the soundstage like HD800 by Sennheiser are doing. These aren't really sounding like near-field loudspeakers or anything like that, but I believe their open shade system that you can see right here actually helped them quite a lot in creating a pretty nice layering of the notes, really nice pinpoint location of the notes around me. So of course I find them still quite deep, quite airy sounding. They have what I'm calling a natural type of soundstage, so still sounding like a headphone, but never trying to show those details inside your skull. So that was quite apparent from the start. In my view, they sound slightly bigger compared to the Odyssey LCD4, slightly more layered, maybe a little deeper compared to the Meze Elite, but those were quite impressive in terms of soundstage. Those sounded slightly bigger to these ones. And I believe that Kenerton Odan and RZH Phobos 2021 also didn't sound as open as these sounded. Personally, I find them slightly more open. There is more happening to my right, there is more happening to my left compared to the Aria Stealth and HE1000 SE. Like I'm looking at a wider aspect picture compared to those two that are providing like a horizontal soundstage in a way. It's like listening to some mini loudspeakers sitting near you, something like that, which is quite interesting. And I believe that from the Hifiman collection, they are providing the most real, believable, the most natural soundstage. Usually with open back headphones, you are either choosing a big soundstage size and a really nice layering, or a very good transient response, a very good impact. Just take a look at those HD800 or Aria Stealth. Those are big sounding, airy but not so impactful. Or look at those Fostex TH909. Those are very impactful, very engaging, but quite claustrophobic, quite small sounding. However, that rule is not really applying to the Hifiman Susvara, which is doing both really great, as these were sounding quite open, quite airy, but also impactful and visceral sounding in the same time. In terms of how clean, how detailed, how transparent these sounded, let's just say that my KEF reference-free loudspeakers, which are considerably more expensive, are not approaching on the same level with the Hifiman Susvara, and any other headphone that I tried at my place or audiophile conventions didn't sound exactly as clean and detailed. HE1000 SE by Hifiman is very close, very close. Meze Elite also very impressive, very close, very detailed sounding, but not exactly on the same level. And everything else like LCD4 by Odyssey, RZH Phobos 2021, Kenerton Odan weren't exactly on the same page with the Susvara. By comparison, those sounded slightly muddy, not that focused, so that was very obvious when doing comparison. If I wouldn't compare, of course, I wouldn't call LCD4 as muddy sounding. That is not really the case, but it's the case when I'm comparing them with Susvara. If I'm listening to Hifiman Susvara for a few days or for a few hours, and then I'm switching them with some competitor headphones, it feels like I'm downgrading from a high-resolution picture to a lower-resolution one. Like I'm using some cheaper lenses on my camera and not my usual sharp ones. And that is actually very obvious. I could feel that in mere seconds because the difference is quite big. After connecting them to some top-tier DACs, to some super clean and transparent sounding amplifiers, it feels really like exposing the whole truth that is happening behind my tracks. So all the good, all the bad, all the mastering errors, all the gremlins, all the grain, everything that is good or bad, everything is put on a plate without making any excuses. And maybe some people wouldn't like hearing everything that is bad in their music, but in my case, I really like that because I can easily compare my DACs, I can easily compare some amplifiers, I can easily compare some headphones, and I know that I can rely on their super clean and detailed type of presentation. When it comes to frequency response, I really like when my bass notes are very layered, very alive, very impactful, very meaty sounding, clean, speedy, undistorted, never sounding like a bad subwoofer. And I'm getting exactly the same vibe from the Hifiman Susvara. And there is no other way in saying it that this is really a perfect rendition of the bass that easily reaches 20 Hz notes, that will be sustained pretty easily, that will be decayed very naturally. And sometimes it feels like I'm listening to some full range stand floor loudspeakers like those behind me because they are really providing an amazing impact and slam into my eardrums, something that I had never experienced before. As I was telling, I didn't experience every single Hifiman headphone out there, but from the ones I've tried, Hifiman Susvara were easily the most organic, the most natural and lifelike sounding in the mid-range, something that I cannot say about Aria or HE1000. They were easily transporting me into my musical wonderland, and I would need a bottle of whiskey for that to happen with Aria Stealth or HE1000 SE. So they were sounding slightly sweeter, slightly warmer, slightly more calmer sounding in the mid-range. The voices carried a very natural pitch with them. All those string-based instruments sounded just fantastic. Piano notes, just outstanding. And when it comes to mid-range presence, this is really how a headphone should sound. Amazing mid-range performance. As for treble, unexperienced audiophiles might attribute a slight treble peak as being highly detailed sounding, but a treble peak is only that, it's just a treble peak and nothing more. And while Hifiman Susvara doesn't rise the whole treble region, not even by a single dB, they still sounded super clean, super transparent, and I know that I've used those words before, but there is no other way to describe the sound of Hifiman Susvara. So these were clean sounding, but never being fatiguing, teeth clenching. I could easily listen to anything really, even to treble intensive music like rock and metal. And I could do that daily, I could do that for hours and hours, and I would never get some listening fatigue. There are many headphones out there that are trying to recreate the shimmer, the vibration of tambourines, of cymbals, but many of them are really failing quite miserably. But I believe Susvara is fully preserving their shimmer, their leading edges, without making them stand out too much. I have measured their performance using a mini DSP ear system, and here is their frequency response, total harmonic distortion, spectral decay, waterfall, and spectrogram. But most importantly, check this graph that compares them with flagship planars of different manufacturers and draw your own conclusions. I compared them with the Odyssey LCD4, Meze Elite, Hifiman HE1000 SE in a comprehensive way. For that, please check out my written review below, that will tell you a lot more, as I feel that this video is already way too long. Okay guys, conclusion time. And the final question isn't going to be if Susvara are amazing enough, but are they amazing enough to justify their very high price tag? That is a very tough question that you should address yourselves. And a flagship headphone like this also comes with a huge con, because you'll be needing the most transparent, the most impactful, the most fast sounding headphone amplifier, and the same applies to integrated and power amplifiers. And $6,000 is a huge chunk of money, but knowing that its competitors cannot outplay them at their own game, it's my pleasure awarding them my absolute highest gold award. It was fully deserved, and I hope they won't come up with a successor anytime soon, as I don't think I'm ready for that. Okay guys, a much fuller and much more detailed Hifiman Susvara review can be found below on my website. I strongly recommend checking it out. In case you want to support this channel, please subscribe to it. And as usual, listen to my music, be positive, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!